Vaiguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaiguru Ji ki Fateh. Is the question part of it? The question is when Jagannath Singh asked me to come here to speak at the camp, I was trying to think for quite a few months what topic I should be talking about. And I zeroed in on the idea because it's Khalsa camp, and I know that one of the focuses of the camp, which I really appreciated this morning, is more of a Gurmat base. So today we're going to be using Gurbani to try to understand a couple of really important parts of what it means to be a Khalsa. Throughout the discussion this week, we're going to be talking about 4 main questions. Why was the Khalsa made? How it was made? For what purpose the Khalsa was made? And what is the future of the Khalsa? And we're going to be looking as much as possible at Guru Granth Sahib Ji, at Bhai Gurdas Ji's Vada, and Bhai Nandalal Ji. So for those of you who don't know, just a quick, before we begin, Bhai Gurdas Ji was a Sikh of Guru Amar Das, Guru Ram Das, Guru Arjan, Guru Hargobind. Everyone here been to Punjab? Who hasn't been to Punjab? For those of you who have been to Punjab, have you been to the Bar Sahib and to Akal Takht? Yep. At the front of Akal Takht, behind the glass wall, there's a brick wall there. Has everyone seen that? Yeah. That's the original brick wall. That brick wall was made with bricks that were fired from Minty by Guru Hargobind. And the bricks were put in place by Baba Buddha Ji and Bhai Gurdas Ji. Bhai Gurdas Ji, very important Guru Sikh. He's the person who wrote the first copy of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And it made a lot of work. If anybody gets to go to Kartarpur to do darshan of that being, you can see his writing, his handwriting is still in that being. It's very interesting. Bhai Nandalal Ji was a Sikh of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's, and he wrote Bani in Persian mainly. And his compositions are not as famous today as they were about 150 years ago, because most of us don't read Persian today. In the time of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, they spoke Persian in the Divan, in the court. That was the language of the courts. They spoke Persian when they were doing government business, so people knew Persian better. Nowadays we don't speak Persian, so we don't really use Bani that much, but it used to be much more popular. Has everyone here, raise your hand if you have not heard the story and okay. If you haven't heard the Sakhi of how the Khalsa was made. Who here has not heard how the Khalsa was made? I did? Closer? Can you hold it for me? Now for those of you who have heard it, let's see here. What year did the Khalsa get made in? 1699. Does anybody know what year Guru Nanak was born? 1469. So 238 years, okay, between Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh Ji giving up his body at Huzur Sahib in 1708. There's a 238-year gap between the two Gurus. In 1699, Guru Gobind Singh Ji created the Khalsa Panth as we know it today. He brought 5 Sikhs who themselves chose to become Khalsa. They were given new names, was Singh, and the women there that day were given the name Kaur. They were given Panch Takar and they were given basic rules. Now I want to take things back from 1699 back to 1469, or a little bit after that. Does anybody know how Guru Nanak became Guru? Who made Guru Nanak into Guru? And why was he a Guru? What was his purpose of being a Guru? What do you think was Guru Nanak's purpose of being Guru?
First, I think it was to basically teach others and how to Well, I guess it was because there was a lot of charity at that time.
A lot of charity?
Spoke out against.
Okay, so Santbir Singh's idea is that it was a very bad situation in the world. Guru Nanak came to try to free people, maybe? To start the new path of Gursikhi, very good. Okay. And how did he become Guru though? Do you know? Does anybody know how Guru Nanak became Guru? Hardeep Singh? Do you know how he became Guru? Okay. Let's go and let's start at the beginning, and then we're going to work our way up to Guru Gobind Singh. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji got married when he was in his mid-teens. His wife's name was Mata Salakni, and he was living in a small town. It was actually quite a big town. It was the capital of Punjab at the time, and the name of the town was Sultanpur Lodi. Guru Nanak's job was working for the government worker, and he would be in charge of the warehouse to pay people. And Guru Nanak Sahib had started in Sultanpur Lodi a small sangat where they would get together down the villa with Kirtan and Bach. That's one thing that I want you guys to try to remember as we hear throughout the week, that a lot of the things that we do today were the same things that Guruji did 500 years ago. Every time we do Bach, every time we do Simran, every time we're in the Rad, it's not just a connection to Guruji now, it's also a connection to our past. It's a connection to millions of Sikhs that have lived before, throughout history. And when you're sitting there in the Rad, it's sometimes nice to think that the same Japji Sahib that we are singing now, the same Japji Sahib that Guru Nanak would have sung with his Sikhs 500 years ago in a little village in Punjab, that Bani hasn't changed. And that relationship between Guru Granth Sahib and us, same relationship between Guru Nanak and his Sikhs. One day Guru Nanak went into a small canal, it's like a river that is in Sultanpur Lodi, and he disappeared into the water. The Sikhs who would come for Amrit Vela to do Nam Simran and Bach, Kirtan with Guruji, showed up there. His sister, Mata Bibi Nanaki, her husband, Bhai Jairam, Bhai Mardana, they showed up there and Guru Nanak Sahib Ji was not there. His clothes were folded up and he had disappeared into the water. And after a few hours of waiting, they thought he had died. They thought he was dead. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, when he came back out of the water 2 days later, 2 or 3 days later is what the Sakhis say, the Sikhs who saw him said he looked physically like the same human being, but it's like something had changed in him. Something happened in that river that transformed Guru Nanak. And it's from that day forward that Guru Nanak started acting like a guru, started teaching Sikhs, going out and doing Adasya, going out and preaching Sikhi in a really formal way. But let's go through and see what happened in the river. Now, let me ask a question. And where does Vaheguru live? Everywhere, right? Within every one of us. And we live in a Christian society where oftentimes you see paintings of the Gurus, and you see Guru Gobind Singh, you're looking up to heaven. It's common, you see lots of Gurudwaras, or you see Guru Nanak looking up. They're very inaccurate, because in Bani it tells us again and again that Vaheguru is inside of us, not separate from us, not removed from us. So it's hard to understand what happened in the river. All we have is an explanation by historians. But we have to remember that whatever happened in the river, it's not like Guru Nanak met a person who looked like, what we sometimes imagine God might look like. This all happened within himself. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji felt that he went into the Darbar of Vaheguru. He went in front of Vaheguru, and Vaheguru Ji told him to jap Naam. And Guru Nanak was blessed with the Vaheguru Mantra. So the Vaheguru Mantra that we sing today, that's something that Guru Nanak got from Vaheguru. Guru Nanak then spoke Japji Sahib. So Japji Sahib was first spoken when Guru Nanak was with Vaheguru. That's where Guru Mantra and Japji Sahib were first spoken. Then Vaheguru gave Guru Nanak a bowl full of Amrit. and Guru Nanak drank the Amrit. After Guru Nanak drank the Amrit, Bhai gave Guru Nanak a khanda of wisdom, a sword of wisdom. And finally he tied the star. What I want Baji to do right here is just read a body of Bhai Gurdas Ji's. See how
गुरु जी सुनी पुकार दातार प्रभ गुरु नानक जग माय पढ़ाया चरण तोय रह रास कर चरणामृत सखा पिलाया भाद्रम पूरन ब्रह्म कर जुग अंदर एक दिखाया चारे पैर दंदे चार वर्ण कराया रारा राणा रंग बराबरी पैरी पवना जग वृताया कोटा खेल प्रमदा पैरा पर शीश नवाया कल जुग बादे तारिया सत नाम परमंत्र सुनाया
This is from Bhai Gurdas Ji's Bani. So when I asked her, why did Guru Nanak come into the world? Bhai Gurdas Ji tells us. Guru Nanak came into the world to make the Raja and the Rank, the poor and the rich equal, to bring equality, to bring peace, to make the four castes into one, to bring dharma, religion to the masses. Guru Nanak came, he got Bhai Guru Mantar, he was given with the staff and a khanda. Now I want to go on to the next Guru. I'm going to tie this together in a second. We first have to go through these shabads. Does anybody know how Guru Angad became Guru? Bhai Lerna? Do you know? Do you know how the Gurus made the next Guru? Does anyone know? Pradhan Singh?
Do you have a test?
After the test. Do you know what the actual ceremony is? Do you know?
Come on.
This is a very important part of our history we should all learn.
Charan Paul.
Ajit? More than anyone else, yes. That's very good. Yes. So what they're saying here is that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji chose Bhai Lerna, and that was Guru Angad's name, Bhai Lerna. He chose him because he had done so much seva. I'm not asking why he was chosen, I'm asking how the actual ceremony was done. Does anybody know how the Guru made the new Guru? What would happen is that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji took Guru Angad Sahib Ji and sat him on the takkat. So I want you to imagine that you are sick of Guru Nanak at Kartarpur 500 years ago. Every day in the morning in Diwan, you come and you do Naam Simran and you do Nitnem. Then you go off and you do your work during the day. You come back in the evening, you do Reras Path with Guruji. Throughout the day, you're doing your work, you're living in Kartarpur, you're seeing Guruji around. Now, every day when you come to Gurudwara, Guruji is sitting on the takkat. And you matate to Guruji, just like we matate to Guru Nanak Sahib Ji. One day you come in and Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is not sitting on the takkat, but the takkat is empty. And he is sitting amongst you. Imagine how shocking this would be. If you are used to every day of your life coming and bowing down to Guruji, and one day Guruji is not up there, but sitting among you. What a shock that must have been. And how different that was. Guru Nanak took Bhai Lerna by the hand, and he took him to the takkat and he made him sit down. And then he did something which shocked everyone. And Bhai Sattar Bhai Bhavan tell us that it was like the Ganga had become backward. So for Hindus, for people in India, the Ganga is the most important thing in the world. So why they use this example is, it's like the most important thing in the world has flipped upside down. That Guru Nanak took the Ganga and flipped it upside down because he is a Guru. And what has he done? He has put his Sikh up there. Then Guru Nanak walked 3 times around Bhai Lerna. He matha tekhed to him. Baba Buddha Ji, who was then at that time Bhai Buddha Ji, put a tilak on Guru of Bhai Lerna's head. a saffron mark with Gesed, and he gave him some money and a coconut in front of him. And then Bhai Lena was proclaimed to become Guru Angad. Does anybody know what the name Angad means? What do we call a page of Guru Granth Sahib Ji? Angad, right? And why do we call it an Angad? It's a limb, right? Well, we consider Guruji to be our living Guru. So out of respect, we call a page an Angad. So Angad means from my limb. When Queen Elizabeth dies, who will become the next king of Canada and Britain, or the next ruler? Does anyone know? It'll be Prince Charles, right, her son. So all of our coins will get Prince Charles's funny face on it, okay, and all of our money. When does Prince Charles become king? Can he become king while she's still alive? No. Have you guys ever heard the expression, the king is dead, long live the king? Has everyone heard that? They say that because they mean the old king is dead, but the new king automatically becomes the king. Does anybody know how the Dalai Lama chooses the next Dalai Lama? You know how the next one is chosen? So in Tibet, there's a people who are Buddhist, for those of you kids who don't know, and they worship, their guru is a guy who's alive today, his name's the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama, once he dies, a monk is given a special job, and he has to go and search, and it takes 5 or 6 years, and they go from bin to bin all around Tibet, and they carry with them some special things. These are possessions that the old Dalai Lama had, mixed in with other things. So, like a pair of glasses, mixed in with other glasses, some toys, other things. And they go around and they ask people for signs. Did something special happen the night the Dalai Lama died? Like, did a star shine really brightly? Was a baby born who didn't cry? Something like this. And they'll find these babies and then they'll show the little kids who are 4 or 5 years old, they'll show them these old things that the old Dalai Lama owned. And if the baby chooses the right one, they say the soul of the old Dalai Lama is in the new one. And that's how they choose who the new Dalai Lama is. The old Dalai Lama never, ever, ever will choose the new one before he dies. And the king or queen will never choose the next king or queen before they die. But Guru Nanak and our gurus have something that none of the other kings or queens or lamas or gurus of other religions or panths have. This is the first thing that he brought down from Guru Kalpur, and that is Nimrata. Guruji has humility, humbleness. Because it takes humility to go from a person sitting on a throne, being bowed down to every day, to being the person who makes a new person and bowing down to them. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji lived for 3 days after Bhai Lena became Guru Angad, and he sat among the Sangha. Imagine how weird that would have been for the 6 who were alive then. That here you are, you go to Gurudwara every day, and now Guru Nanak is sitting with you. Guru Hari Ji lived for 2 weeks after Guru Har Krishna Ji became Guru, sitting among the Sangha, making sure the 6 understood he might only be 4.5 years old, but he is the next Guru. Don't forget that. So this idea of making the next Guru in your own lifetime. Now, Bhai, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਪੌੜੀ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਸਤਮ ਭਵਨ ਦੀ Oh, नहीं, sorry.
तो वाहिगुरु जी नाव करता कादर करे को बोल होवे जो कीमदै देवना सत भैण भराव है पारनगत दान प्रीमदै नानक राज चलाया सच कोट सतानी नीवदै.
Can you explain this line? Nanak Raj Chalaaya.
नानक राज चलाया सिर सच कोट सतानी नीवदै. Sadguru Nanak Pasha Maharaj had been given the Raj to start up the Sach Port Satani
with a true foundation. True foundation. And the daughter.
Learn Harion Sat Sera Karsati Amrit Pivada Matagur Atma Devi Karak Jor Parak Jida Gur Chile Raski Nam Islam Tivada Sertika the Dos Jivada.
Now this is in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and let me ask a question here. What do you think is the difference between Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh Ji when you imagine them? Baji, what do you think is the difference between the two? Not really a difference, okay. Just physically, but they were the same person, the same soul. This is, I think, one of the hardest things for us as Sikhs to understand. And it's because we can't understand it through our mind, but only through Pyar for Guruji, through Bani, through Nam Simran. That the Gurus were one and all the same. That there's no difference between the Gurus. A lot of days now with the paintings that we have, with the sakis that we tell, we have an idea of what Guru Nanak Sahib is, and we have a different idea of what Guru Gobind Singh Ji is. Yes, some people say Guru Nanak Sahib is all about love and peace, and Guru Gobind Singh is all about fighting and killing. A lot of you hear this oftentimes. And especially if you read other people who write books about Sikhi, they say Guru Nanak started one religion and Guru Har Gobind Ji changed it, or Guru Gobind Singh Ji changed it. So we're reading here a Shabad written during the early Guru's time in Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And this Shabad talks about the fact that Guru Nanak started a Raj, he started a kingdom. And he made Pailena the next king. And what did he give to Pailena? Kharag means a kirpan. Guru Nanak gave Pailena a khanda. A khanda, a weapon. Now it wasn't a real weapon, it was a weapon of wisdom to cut through falsehood. What all of Sikh history is, from 1469 to 1708, it is an attempt by Guru Nanak and the other 9 Gurus to recreate that experience that Guru Nanak had with Akal Purkh Waheguru and give it to us. When we take Amrit, when we start wearing the stad, when we jap naam, when we wear a kirpan, we are not doing something that Guru Gobind Singh Ji started. We are doing something that Vaheguru gave to Guru Nanak. This is an experience that one human being had that was unique in all of history. Guru Nanak had a unique and amazing experience direct with Vaheguru. And he was given certain gifts from Vaheguru. And those gifts that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji was given, all of Sikh history, is an attempt by the Gurus to give those gifts to us, the Sikh nation, and to make us into the Guru Khalsa Ban. So Guru Nanak got Amrit from Akal Purkh, and Guru Gobind Singh made that Amrit into real Amrit that we now take. Guru Nanak was given a dastar, and the dastar was a sign of becoming the Guru. That's how Pailena became Guru. He was given a dastar, and we are all given dastars now. Guru Nanak was given a Kharag, a khanda of wisdom, of gyan. And we are now all wearing that real kirpan to remind us of that one that Guru Nanak was given from Akal Purkh Waheguru. What is the Khalsa and how was it created? It was not created in 1699. The Khalsa was created by Guru Nanak Sahib Ji. The Khalsa was created by Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, and the Khalsa is the Guru. When we say Guru Khalsa Panth, we say it a lot. And this morning, Baji gave a very nice explanation of why we take out the prasad for the 5-6. And he mentioned in passing that it was for the Guru Khalsa Panth. The Guru Khalsa Panth is not an abstract idea, it's a very real thing. Now, out of those of us who have taken Amrit, I want you to try to imagine being at Jamkor Sahib in 1702. In Jamkor Sahib, and just to give a little bit of history, the Mughals had laid a siege to Anandpur Sahib for many months. Sikhs were starving to death. They had no food. Finally, In desperation, Mata Gujari and other Sikhs asked Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we should leave Anandpur Sahib. Guruji, taking the advice of the Sikhs, said, okay. They left in the middle of winter. Anybody here ever been in Punjab in winter time? How cold is it? It's pretty cold. And is there insulation in the homes? No. So even if it's 0 or 1 degrees, it feels colder than here because everything is stone or mitti. All the houses are open and it's very, very cold. In the mornings especially, it's freezing. Anybody been caught in a rainstorm in Punjab in the winter time? It's not pleasant. It doesn't rain like it rains here. It comes down like it pours. Guru Gobind Singh Ji leaves Anandpur Sahib with the Sikhs. And the Mughal army and the Hindu hill rajas attack. Thousands of Sikhs are killed. 3 of the Panch Pyare are shaheed. Many of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's texts and the books that he's been writing and working on are destroyed. After a whole night of brutal fighting, I was talking to Tirupati earlier this morning, we forget what fighting was like. Who here has ever practiced Gatka for a little while? Just put up your hands. Is it tiring after a while? Your Gatka? Maybe after 10-20 minutes? I want you to imagine holding a bag of atta. Okay, a bag of atta is about 20 kilos. That's how much some kirpans and kandas weigh. In one hand and fighting with that for 48 hours, which was the time it took from Anandpur Sahib to get to Chambor Sahib. In pitch darkness, with no lights, going through a jungle, while being attacked by the entire northern army of the Mughal government, which was about 1 million soldiers at that time. Khalsa is being destroyed. The Sikhs are being killed left and right. After a long night of traveling and getting attacked, Khalsa reaches a small little house. It's really just a house. And they make it into a fort quickly, because it has a wall around it. And they wait there the night. And everyone there knows what's going to happen next. We talk about bravery or courage, but real bravery, real courage, is when you know that you're going to die, and you're still not afraid of it. Those 6 volunteered in groups of 5 to go out and fight all night. Because for Guru Gobind Singh Ji, just like for the Sikhs in 1984, or throughout Sikh history, it was better to die fighting, even in a lost cause, than to surrender and give up. Because it's a victory of principle. Guruji's oldest son goes and dies. Babaji Singh. Guruji's younger son, Baba Jajar Singh, goes and dies. Guruji's beloved Sikhs are going to sacrifice themselves one after another. And for those of you who have children or younger brothers or sisters, the thought of a child or a younger brother or sister dying in front of your eyes is traumatizing. But for Guruji, each one of us was a child to him. After all night of all the Sikhs went out to die, Guru Gobind Singh starts to put on his armor to get ready to go out and fight. And 5 Sikhs that were left, and we only know the names of 2 or 3 of them. Bhai Singh and Bhai Singh were still there, and there was a Bhai Santbir Singh who becomes important in the story later. They ordered Guru Gobind Singh Ji to not go. They don't ask him. They don't say, Guruji, we really think you shouldn't go out and fight. They order him not to go because they have in them the power of the Guru, the 5 of them together. They are the Guru. A question that we have to ask ourselves is, if we were alive then, after that terrible night, would we feel would we feel that we are good enough Sikhs to order our Guru to do something? That is a test that Guruji has given us. He's given us Gurgandhi. He's made us into the Guru. It is our challenge now to rise up to that level that we may order the Guru to do something. Do you think Guruji argued with the Pandit when they told him to do that? He listened right away. Just as Bhai Lerna listened to Guru Nanak. Just as Guru Nanak listened to Vaheguru. The experience that Guru Nanak had in that river for those 3 days, we don't know what happened in all that time, but we know little pieces of information. What happened in that river to Guru Nanak Sahib Ji? Guru Gobind Singh Ji tried to give us that same experience. He did give us that same experience of making us from normal human beings into something much more dramatic and important, into Khalsa. So some of you might have been here when I spoke in January at the West Coast Winter thing. So I apologize. This next part might be going over the same thing I spoke about then. But a quick definition of the word Khalsa is Khalsa comes from a Persian word which means directly owned by the government, by the king. So when you go to court in Canada, and let's say you beat up somebody and you go to court. When, in America, if you guys ever watch Law and Order or other shows, they say the people versus, Hardeep Singh for beating up Japram Singh, okay? In Canada, they say the crown versus Hardeep Singh. So it's actually, because he committed a crime, it's a crime against Queen Elizabeth. She's the queen, so it's a crown versus. And property owned by the government in Canada is called Crown land. Have you guys heard that? Or you've heard about maybe Canada Post is called Crown Corporations. Same way, the Khalsa is Crown property. And the crown that we bow after is not Queen Elizabeth in England, it's Guru Gobind Singh. It's Guru Granth Sahib. So we are also independent of anything else. No one can rule over us. I want to very quickly I was going to read this out, but I think it will be a little bit difficult. It's in Farsi, and so it's not that easy for any of us to understand. Or maybe some of us actually do read Farsi, I apologize, but I think most of us don't. I'm going to read the translation. It's not a perfect translation, but it's not a bad translation either. Of Nandalji's Bani. Vaheguru addressed Guru Nanak, and Guru Nanak responded, I am yours, I am your slave. I am the dust of your feet. Vaheguru asked Guru Nanak again, who are you? And Guru Nanak said, I am the dust of your feet. Guru Nanak says that I am Vaheguru says to Guru Nanak that I am inside of you, Nanak. There's none other like you. Whatever I want and whatever I wish, you will perform and that will be just. Show the world the way of Nam, of meditation. Make all the people in the world virtuous. At all places I will take care of you, Nanak. I am your helper. Whoever respects you, they will be respected by me. Display to them, show them yourself as Guru, and convert the questions into answers. Go into the world and lead with your light, because without me, this world is of no significance. Guru Nanak Sahib gives Vaheguru gives Guru Nanak Sahib his hukam to go into the world, to show the world his light. In the same way, Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given us a mission in this world. Who here has ever been at home when a Christian missionary has come to their house to try to convert them? Has anybody ever had that experience? It's not a pleasant experience. And it's not fun because they don't know anything about Sikhi. But they assume that their way is better than ours, right? They assume that their answer is better than ours. And I think Baja's going to be talking about the best of the best later. So we won't get into that right now. But when we are going into the world to teach about Sikhi, we don't teach from a place of homage, from a place of arrogance. Our way is best, your way is wrong. We know our way is the best. We know that our way is the straightest path to Vaheguru. And it is the easiest path to Vaheguru. But at the same time, a Sikh has a duty, like Baji was saying this morning again, not to hurt the heart of another, not to cause pain. Guru Nanak never taught with anger or fear or unkindness. And I like to tell the Sakya to look at when Guru Nanak Sahib Ji went to Hardabad and he went to the river. Does anyone hear this story? Do you know the story? So we'll go over the story very quickly. I want you to imagine, who here has ever seen photos of the Ganga when there's like millions of people and they do their prayers once a year? It's an astounding number of people. All these people wearing their orange robes. Now I want you to imagine that all these people are wearing their orange robes and they're all throwing water in one direction. And then, in the middle of that huge crowd, there's one guy dressed differently on purpose, throwing water the other way. He would stand out, right? Right away you would notice him. And that's what Guru Nanak did. All these people are wearing the same clothes, and Bhai Das Ji tells us that Guru Nanak always would put on weird clothes whenever he would go on the dasis. And he put on weird clothes on purpose because when you see somebody doing something strange, your first reaction is to ask, who are you? What are you? And then Guru Nanak will get a chance to teach about Sikhi. So he started to throw water in the opposite way. And everyone starts crowding around him. And they think he's crazy. And they say, what is wrong with you? Why are you throwing water the wrong way? And Guru Nanak Sahib Ji smiles and he says, well, can you tell me why you're throwing water that way? It's like, well, our ancestors who have died are living on the sun and they are very hot. Because the sun is very hot. And we have to throw the water to give them some comfort. I see everyone laughing here. And sometimes when we learn about other religions, it is some funny, the beliefs that they have. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji didn't start screaming and saying, you're stupid, you're dumb, why are you wasting your time? Why would you do something? How can water reach the sun? He didn't do that. Instead, he said, well, you know, I'm a farmer and I have land in Punjab. And I've been gone for many years. My wife is there, my 2 children are there, and I'm worried about them. What if there hasn't been enough rain this year? So I'm throwing water to my bin in Punjab. And everyone starts laughing. This is ridiculous. How can a guy throwing water in a river here reach Punjab? This is insane. They start laughing at him. And then Guru Nanak asks them, why are you laughing? And they say, well, we're laughing because how can water from this river reach Punjab, which is, 1,000 miles away? I'm not sure how far the water is to Punjab. I don't know. It's pretty far. And Guru Nanak says, well, if my water I'm throwing here can't reach Punjab, which is not that far. I mean, I came from there, I walked there, from there to here. How can water go to the sun, which is millions of kilometers away? And all of a sudden they all realized how ridiculous they were. How much they were wasting their lives doing an empty ritual instead of doing something of worth with their lives. Nam Simran and Seva. He didn't teach by screaming, by anger, by putting them down. He didn't teach them by going there and saying, what you guys are all doing is wrong and backward and you're wasting your time and you're going to die and waste your whole life. I don't know what's going on there. He taught out of Vyam. And something to remember is that even in the most greatest difficulty, Guruji always teaches from a place of love and Vyam. And I think that is most vividly demonstrated by Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, who, while being tortured alive, is still smiling. While being tortured alive, for those of you who have taken Amrit, and for those of you who have not, and are aspiring to take Amrit. What the point of today's talk is for us to realize that taking Amrit, becoming a Sikh, becoming a Khalsa, is the first step to a path where we can hopefully be like those Sikhs at Jaipur Sahib who could order Guru Gobind Singh Ji to do something. And when they ordered him, they didn't do it out of a power trip, like, ha, we get to tell Guruji what to do. This is awesome. You know? They did it like Guru Gobind Singh Ji did from a place of Nimrata. I also want us to rethink about Sikh history and stop thinking about it in the way that people who write about our religion think about it, and realize that everything that Guru Gobind Singh Ji did, or Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji did, or Guru Amar Das Ji did, started with Guru Nanak Sahib Ji. That the Khalsa ceremony, the ceremony that we do, is a ceremony that is echoed directly from what Guru Nanak got from Akal Purkh Vaheguru, what Guru Nanak gave to Bhai Lehna, what Bhai Lehna, when he became Guru Angad, gave to Guru Amar Das. That step by step, all that the Khalsa was a new Gurgadi ceremony for us to become Guru. That's what it was. It was that next step for us to become the next Guru. So that we were given a Kirpan, we were given a Dastar, we were given Naam. And what did Guru Gobind Singh Ji do after he made the 5 Sikhs into Khalsa?
He himself took Amrit. He himself took Amrit from them.
He himself took Amrit from them. He himself took Amrit from them. Guru Gobind Singh Ji's act. It's hard to, we have to sometimes use our imagination. Anybody ever been to Anand Prasad or Kirt Prasad? Who's been to that part of Punjab or to Himachal Pradesh? Well, that part of Punjab is very hilly. It's got all these big hills. They call it Pahari region, hilly region. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Anand Prasad was just one area, and there were kings all around. These were all different Hindu kings.
Small kingdoms.
So those small kingdoms, what we would call in English principalities. They're like princes. And they had little armies, and they had little castles, little forts. And Guru Gobind Singh is very much living like one of these kings. Being a king, with a kalki, with all of the physical appearances of what a king looks like, to get down on your knees in front of your own Sikhs and to beg them for Amrit. When we take Amrit, or when we aspire to take Amrit, we have to remember that Guruji also bowed down in front of us. That we are not just becoming the Khalsa of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, but at the same time Guru Gobind Singh Ji is becoming the Khalsa of us. A very powerful moment in Sikh history. The most powerful moment. As amazing as Guru Nanak Sahib Ji bowing down to Bhai Lehna, Guru Gobind Singh did the same thing 300 years later. He bows down in front of the Panch Pyare and begs them. to bless him with the same Amrit. He didn't need to take the Amrit. That's a really important thing to remember. The Sikhs, if he hadn't done it, I don't think anyone would have thought, shouldn't Guruji also take Amrit? It's not something that would have crossed anybody's mind at that time. But it was a natural thing to do after what Guru Nanak had done to Guru Angad. We've talked now about how the Khalsa was made, and we've talked a little bit about why the Khalsa was made. I don't want to go into topics because it's difficult being the first speaker. I don't want to feed into the topics of other speakers. But I want to talk for a little bit, because we have about 15 minutes still, about what Guru Gobind Singh Ji's vision was for the Khalsa after 1699. What did he want from us? What did he want to happen in Punjab? What did he want to happen in the Khalsa nation? Earlier, someone had said that Guru Nanak came to the world to bring freedom. And that's the number one clear answer for what the Guru's purpose is in this world. Is freedom. And it is a freedom of three types of freedom. Freedom of the mind, freedom of the soul, and freedom of the body. We get free from our mind by beating Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ankar. We get freedom for our bodies by fighting and freeing ourselves, or through peaceful protest, like Sikhs have done for hundreds of years. Standing up for people's rights. We get freedom for our soul by connecting to a Khalsa Waheguru and realizing that we are not separate from Waheguru, but we are just a reflection. So, if any of you guys want to try too, it's okay. I know it's hard to be sitting here after this morning. We had a long morning, but we'll be over soon, then we'll do some questions with other speakers as well. Guru Nanak Sahib's main purpose, and let me put it another way. What's so great about freedom? Why would a person want to be free? A person wants to be free to be happy. That is ultimately what the Guru wants for all of us, is to be happy. Is to be content, is to not be burdened, either physically or mentally or spiritually. What Guruji has always wanted for us is for our Sikhs to have an easy, happy life, which is why they have given us Sikhi, which is a straight and true path to happiness. So what is the purpose of the Khalsa? The purpose of the Khalsa is to bring freedom and happiness to the world. It's as simple as that. And everything that the Khalsa has done over the last 300 years, all the sacrifices that we talk about, all the Shaheed brothers and sisters of ours, from Banda Singh Bahadur up until today, their goal in doing that was not power. Their goal in doing that was not just getting a sovereign land, for example, or beating the British out of India, or destroying the Mughal Empire, or fighting against the Indian government, or whatever it may be. The purpose of all those six sacrifices was to bring happiness to their fellow human beings. And that's something we need to also become both proud of our warrior tradition, but also not to revel in it, not to become obsessed with it either, in the sense that we think of it as an end. What I mean by that is that being a warrior, being a Khalsa, we don't fight for the sake of fighting, we fight for the sake of a goal, of bringing freedom. And there's a very clear indication of that, of how fighting and being a warrior is also an act of love. Does anybody know what Guru Gobind Singh Ji would put on his arrows when he would shoot them?
Gold. Yeah, bit of gold.
Bit of gold. Yeah. So, why do you think he put gold on his arrows? To show that he's the king, to show off, that's a good... not show off, I know what you mean, but to show that he's like the way that Guruji wore ugly, not in a bad way, but to show that I'm a king. Yeah?
It was actually for if someone's wounded, but he might use the I don't know how you say it.
Basically, he
Like
it was for the last rites which are performed on the body of others to help him with the murder.
So, can you imagine if in Iraq today, or let's say Afghanistan, every time Americans shot a Taliban soldier, they mailed them an envelope full of cash and said, here you go, here's some money also? It sounds ridiculous. A gold arrow. What was Guru Gobind Singh's purpose? It's exactly that. It's even in the act of killing somebody, Guruji is showing that he loves them. Even in the act of destroying them, he is still showing that I might have to kill you because you are doing evil things. But I still am worried about your family. I'm still worried about your well-being. That after you are dead, your family should have a little bit of money to at least do the burial, to do the funeral, and maybe have a little bit left over to take care of themselves. Or if you're injured, you have some money to help you while you recover. Even in an act of war, Guruji is still demonstrating love. That is the type of mentality that we need to take into our lives. When we see injustice in the world, be it a small injustice at school, some kid getting bullied or something, or a bigger injustice at work, we see somebody doing something that is illegal, or stealing money from your company, or whatever it may be, or something politically, a group in your community or your city is being marginalized or is being discriminated against by the government, whatever the injustice is. When you go to confront that injustice, you need to come at it from a place of love and not from a place of anger or hate or rage. This is an inspiring thing about our traditions. And I think I've spoken about it before, but it's such an inspiring story that I'd like to tell you again, is in the 1920s, long before Mahatma Gandhi had come back from South Africa, Sikhs were doing peaceful protests in India. The peaceful protest movement in India against the British government was started by Sikhs. And there's a first-hand account of the Jeto Morcha. And at the Jeto Morcha, this Christian priest is talking, and he's writing about what happened. And what had happened was that the Sikhs were trying to go to a pind called Jeto, where there had been an Akhand Path. And the British government had stopped the Akhand Path halfway through. And to Sikhs, this was an unbelievable insult to Guruji. That once we have made a promise to do Path, you can't stop it. And it was bigger than that one issue. It was also about, in a larger picture, freeing India from the British. So Sikhs made what were called Shahidi Jathas. They would go to Khalsa side, entire villages, and not just men, women. You can find old pictures of Bibiya going with their little kids in their arms, and they're all going to a Khalsa side. They would do a das, and they would say, we are not going to stop until we get our goal. And so they start a morcha, like a procession. And at Jeto there's a small road, so there's 5 or 6 Sikhs across. So imagine 5 of them walking across. And they're marching. And the British policemen are standing across from them. Each one of these 6 has a qurban on them. Each one of them has a qurban on them. But before they left, they had made a promise not to use violence. Because like Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, you first have to try other things before. We're very quick amongst us young kids sometimes to want to resort to beating the guy up if he does something disrespectful to Guruji, or this group is doing something bad, let's go take care of them. The Sikhi way is to try everything else first, and then if that fails, then as a last resort violence. So Sikhs have made a promise. A lot of people who study our religion are like, these are violent people with their swords, not understanding where personal qurban comes from, but also, more importantly, the history of incidents like this. The Sikhs marched up to the British, right up to their faces, and they stood there. I want you guys to imagine this group of 5, 6, and behind them are thousands of Sikhs, going all the way back on the road. And they have their qurbans, they're all wearing black. The stars black at that time was the color of protest against the British government. The British policemen have these batons, lati they call them in India. They're hurt a lot. When you get hit with one, it's not like when your mom hits you with a crutch at home. This will break your arms, or your collarbone, or give you a concussion. And the British tell them to get lost, and they stand there doing bond. And the British officers reach up with the batons and they hit the Sikhs right on the head. And this guy writing about it says not one of them flinched. Not one of them, it's like, oh, don't hit me. Not one of them. And they got hit right in the head. They fell down, and they stood up, and they stood face to face with the British again. And the British then again hit them. They say each one got hit 2-3 times, and when they couldn't get up anymore, they'd roll off to the side of the road, and the next line would march up to get hit. Thousands of Sikhs that day got beaten like that, one after another. So that type of commitment, that type of strength, that type of courage, that's not something that we can get ourselves. It's not something you can learn about and read about. I can become brave by, or you can't go practice that type of bravery. That is a gift from Guruji. That is something that is divinely given to you. That is something that comes from Nam and Bani. Making it a part of yourself. To be so brave that, anybody ever have a friend pointing the last Canada? And you like flinch right away, right? Imagine if someone has a gun that they're pointing at you. We see that on TV all the time, but all of us get very scared when someone's like pointing the last Canada. Imagine someone's got a gun, or if someone has a big lati, and they're right in front of your face and they're going to hit you, and you don't waver in your strength and your commitment and your exhaustion. My point in also telling that Saki is this. I don't want to give the impression that getting to that stage of being a Sikh, who is of that caliber, of those women and men who were in the mortuary at that time, or enter Gorsab with Guru Gobind Singh Ji, is something that is very difficult. When the time comes, Guruji also gives us that power. If any of you ever happen to read stories of 1984, especially stories of Sikhs in other parts of India in November, in Delhi and other cities, you would hear stories about Sikhs who say, we never touch a qurban in our whole life. But somehow on that day, when this whole group of people was coming to kill us, we just picked up our qurbans and we defended our neighborhood. or we defended our Gurdwara. That there is within us something special that Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given us. And that something special is a spark of Amrit from Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, that they very carefully gave from one Guru to the other to the other. And that very special spark of Amrit, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, that didn't keep it with one person anymore, but he gave it to the whole month. So that when we become Guru Wale, we always hear Guru Wale Bano. Think about what that really means. We're saying become like the Guru. Become as if you are the Guru. And think about that man living in Punjab 500 years ago with no Khalsa, with 5 or 6 Sikhs, who had a dream and a vision to go and transform the world and to bring freedom and happiness to people. So we are engaged in that man's dream, that man's goals. That's what our lives are. We are dedicating ourselves to what the mission that Guru Nanak was given from Bhai Guru. That's what we should remember in our day-to-day lives. What is the true purposes of our being here? It is to bring happiness to ourselves and to bring happiness to the people around us. So, I apologize. I made a lot of mistakes. A little bit disorganized and rusty as well. I haven't spoken in a while, so I apologize for that. And for all mistakes that I made, I apologize as well. We're going to stop the speech now, and then I guess there's a question and an answer. So, Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
Hanji, Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
There's no questions. Fresh ones?
Because
he's covered it.
But if you think cover the question box.
Does anybody have maybe questions you want to ask without from the question box? Or are we not going to do that?
Men have nothing to do with it.
Okay, any questions or not really? Any questions?
No, I think these type of I think these type of Maryada questions and stuff would need to be dealt with afterwards.
So, any questions pertaining to Santbir Singh's or what he spoke on today, or the topic on hand right now?
Yeah, I would like to actually refer back to when we were speaking about Guru Nanak Dev Ji's first interaction with Vaheguru. When we speak about Vaheguru, I've heard of a lot of individuals explain Vaheguru as an essence, as a feeling, not as a thing or an object that can be limited to one, but as this overall. But when we talk about his interaction with Vaheguru, is it literal or is it figurative? Like,
yeah, I mean, I was trying to get him to explain that when I had said, when people look up to heaven, we have to try to break out of that mindset of God being separate from us, of the holy or the sacred being separate from us as humans. But it's not, it's within us. So what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji experienced in the river, it's how Sikh historians and how people like Bhai Gurdas and Bhai Nandwal have explained it to us, is to try to take what was a metaphorical or a internal transformation and make it literal by teaching us. And in a way, Guru Gobind Singh Ji creating the Khalsa was taking something that happened internally within Guru Nanak Sahib Ji as an experience with within himself, and making it manifest in a physical reality. Hence, the Amrit that we talk about in Gurbani becomes real Amrit. And the Khanda that is a metaphor becomes a real Gurbani. Right? And all these things go from being... A lot of people debate, was it goats or was it the Panchakya's heads, right? This is a common topic people ask. And I don't want to get into that. I would say that for me, it's important to believe that it was themselves getting their heads cut off. And it's important for me to believe that because what Guru Gobind Singh Ji was trying to do that day was to take a metaphor and make it real so that we would never forget. What could be more dramatic than killing someone and bringing them back to life? When we then go in front of the Panj ourselves, that is what we need to keep in mind. That I am Bhai Daya Singh, or I am Bhai Mokam Singh, I'm going in front of Guruji to be killed today, to be destroyed, and to be made new. And Guru Nanak went into the water like we get Amrit. It's very the same thing. And Guru Nanak went into the water, and he came out and people said he looked the same but different. There was a glow on him. Something had changed. And when you read old accounts of what happened to the Panch Pyare, they say, well, we can tell that that's Dayarama. And we can tell that that's Sahibjan. We can tell that it's those same 5 guys that went in. But they look different now. There's something unique about them. And if any of you have ever had the good grace to meet a real Gursik, someone who's not a show-off like me giving speeches, but who does Simran and Bhakt and Seva with humility, you will see that same type of that glow on their face. It's a visible thing almost. It's a feeling that you get. So that's what Guruji was trying to do, I think. What happened in the river, it's not a literal, you're not going to walk into a big room and there's a Kalpa Vajra sitting on a throne, because that doesn't make sense with our idea of Vajra. It happened within himself. The story created about it is to teach us. Anybody else?
You mentioned that that's when he came up with the mantra, Vajra. So before that, did they do any sermon or?
You know, it's a really interesting topic. Maybe some of the other speakers will know. There are cool little facts about Sikh history, like what did they say before they said Fateh, right? Along the Sikh stone, they used to say Kirpan or Sach Kirpan. That's how they would greet each other. What was Guru Nanak's role before that? Because all of Bhai Nandal's Bani and the Purana Janam Sakhis, these old stories, make it clear that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji started acting like a guru in the way that we understand him to be a guru after he left the river. But there are stories from when he was a child where he was obviously teaching people lessons still. And he did have a Sangha in Sultanpur with his sister, Bibi Nanaki, and her husband and a few other people. What he was teaching them, what they were doing, I'm not sure. I imagine because from Sikh tradition, and even if you read the Shabdas themselves, there are some Shabdas in Guru Nanak that he wrote earlier when he was younger, before this experience in the river. I imagine that they must have just sung Yirgid, the Shabdas Yirgid, you know? But almost all old texts say that the Vajra mantra was brought from Kalpa at that moment. So I don't know if they did non-Simran as we were before that. Maybe somebody else knows.
याद कर लो सो इस जिस पहला कीर्तन नाम सी इस सात नाम
Yeah, exactly.
Explain का
Badi's point is that, I mean, what does Simran mean and what does Jap mean? And Vani just means to meditate, to concentrate, to
पहला
dhyan.
कीर्तन नाम
So, Naam Simran within yourself.
कीर्तन are different names for God.
Different names for God.
True name of God for
Yeah,
God.
Vajra. Okay. So they could have used other names for Vajra too, like Satnam and so forth. Any other questions? Oh, Anjapati.
It's very interesting and enlightening. Could you define what Guru Nanak Dev Ji or even the other Gurus were? Were they men or were they God Himself in the man?
I guess I should stop there. I remember when I was younger, I was always taught Guru and Vajra are different. But if you read Gurbani, it comes up in a lot of places that there's no distinction between Guru and Vaheguru. I think a good explanation for this comes from Bhai Santbir Singh. It's a very small shabad, I guess you could call it. Only like 1.5 pages. And in it, Bhai Nandalal Ji is asking Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he says, Guruji, how do I do darshan of you? Because you have said that Sikhs should do darshan of Guruji every day. And it's like one of these sort of technical questions that we have that we might be sometimes embarrassed to ask. But Nandalji's point is that, what if I'm not in Anandapur Sahib? How do I do your darshan, Guruji? How do all the Sikhs who are living in other parts of India, how do they do your darshan? It's a good question. There's Sikhs all over. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji says that Teen Roop Hai Moy, I have 3 forms. Nirguna, Sarguna, Gur Shabad. Guruji is saying that he has one form which is nirguna, without quality, Akal Purkh Vaheguru. He says to do darshan of me in that form is to do Naam Simran. I have a physical form. To do darshan of that is to come into Matade, here, in Anandapur Sahib, or for us to go and meet the Bajpayee. And I have Gur Shabad form, which you can do anywhere by doing darshan of the Granth Sahib, Girdri Path, Vani, Kirtan. That gives me an idea that the distinction that we're asking, were they God or were they men, is looking at it from a Christian perspective. From a Sikh perspective, there's no difference. They were physical people. If you hit them, they would bruise. If you cut them, they would bleed. So in a very real sense, they could get hurt. And the Gurus were tortured. Guru Arjan Sahib was tortured. Nothing miraculous happened. He was put through awful torture for 3 days. Guru Harkrishna Ji died of smallpox. It was a really, really awful illness. And Guru Tegh Bahadur, of course, had his head separated from his body. Guru Gobind Singh Ji was wounded, and that wound later killed him. So, in that sense, they are human beings who suffered, physically suffered. But those physical dukh had no impact on them, because they within themselves were Vaheguru. What my own understanding is that we all have that ability, that the Gurus were perfectly, people say nowadays, fully realized. When you're fully realized and fully in tune, then there is no difference between Vaheguru and you. And I think that's a state of mind that the Gurus were in. And that wasn't something that I think can be fully understood, but I think the best explanation for it is, if you are of that state of mind, then you can be tortured like Guru Arjan and still be happy. Right? So I would say that they were physically human beings, but they were also Akal Purkh. And I have no problem with saying, we have shabads, and my Barney knowledge is very minimal, and I apologize for that. And I read the Bhakti, I don't remember it very well. If someone can remember from the Patna Savaiye, there's a talk about Guru Arjan Sahib Ji. There you go. That Guru Arjan said, you are Nirkar, you are also Akal Purkh Vaheguru. And these types of talks come up a lot in Gurbani. That there's no difference between. Or Bhai Gurdas Ji Vara, or Bhai Gurdas Ji is talking about going to Fir Baba Kya Baghdad. Then Guru Nanak went to Baghdad. Ek Baba Akal Ru, Duja Babi Gurada. So Bhai Gurdas Ji says, one is the Baba who is the Rupa of Akal, and one is Bhai Madana Dosi, Jarasi of Tirugadal. So I don't think there's any thing wrong. I think that's very clear that the Gurus are Vaheguru, but not in the sense of Hindus that they are incarnated Devti and Devte, and not in the sense of Christians that Jesus is somehow God himself made physical. We don't have that idea. They're not an God. They're not an avatar of God. They're not a piece of God being born on earth. Because in Sikhi, we are all pieces of God being born on earth. We all have God work inside of us.
So would it be right that when you talk about the Guru, when you talk about Vaheguru, you talk about the Shabd itself, you're not talking about the physical, personal, the imaginary God that we as humans believe or see around us. You're talking more of the Shabd, and that's that same Shabd that passes between each and every one of us,
Exactly.
humanity.
I would say that it is much, much easier to have something physical to worship. And there's a reason why in our families, in Punjabi culture at large, we have family members who worship Babe or who worship photos or pictures or idols or whatever. It's easier. It's nice to have something on the wall to be able to look at and take care of. The photo or the statue or whatever it is. Or to have a person there to tell you what to do. Also, you know? It's much harder to understand why you're inside of yourself. It is the biggest challenge I think that Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given us, is to, by getting rid of the one Guru, and by giving us Guru Granth Sahib Ji, it's difficult for people. And I remember being asked a question once that bothered me for a long time by a young Sikh. It was a silly question. He just said, if you were alive during any Guru's time, which Guru's time would you want to be alive? It's like, his point is that he wanted to be alive during Guru Gobind Singh Ji's time, and like to be a warrior, and he thought that would be really cool. And then I thought about it, and after a while I didn't have an answer for it right then. Guru Arjan Sahib Ji used to sleep on the ground at the Akal Takht while Guru Granth Sahib Ji was higher. Guru Gobind Singh Ji Mata Tek to Guru Granth Sahib Ji. I think the time that I would want to be alive is now. We have a Guru that our own Gurus worship. We are the luckiest time in Sikh history. We have this weird thinking it'd be so awesome to be alive in the Guru's time. It's, first of all, it's a waste of time to think about that because there's no way you're going to go back in time. But more importantly, we are the lucky ones now. We have the Guru that all the other Gurus aspired to become. Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the greatest Guru. So it is very difficult not to have. And even in the way that we respect Guru Granth Sahib Ji, you see people start to get into idol worship. I remember once being at a Gurdwara, and they were going to do a program afterwards where they were doing a movie in the Darbar. And they were doing the movie against the side of the Gurdwara, on the side of the wall. And so Khalsa no guess, Guru Granth Sahib Ji was not there. Guru Granth was taken upstairs. And all these people kept coming in and Mata Tekin still, to the Balki side. So I kept getting increasingly upset about this. I was a lot younger then, probably getting upset easily. And I said, you know, this old woman came. I said, Mata Ji, Guru Sahib Ji, oh, Khalsa no hai. And this old woman said, Beta, Mata Mata Tekna. You know? I got to do it. It's a ritual for her. She doesn't care if she's not there or not. And you guys will often see people rub the legs of the Balki Sahib like they're polishing Guru's feet or something, you know? This is something that we have to also be careful of. The respect we give to Guru Granth Sahib Ji has to be utmost respect. This is a Guru that changed one word in it caused Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji to disown his son for the rest of his life. The Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji said to Ram Rai, you are not my son, and get lost. Because he changed one line in it. So I'm not saying don't respect Guru Granth Sahib Ji. What I'm saying is that we must be careful not to fall into the idol worship type mentality. It's a clear line.
That's why we have the Guru Granth Sahib, is not to fall into the idol worship.
Yeah, no, but the sad thing is that we sometimes forget why we do the things we do in the law. You know?
It would be fine.
So, any other questions?
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. Your whole topic was what does it mean to be Khalsa? And some of us, in life now, as we live it, we start to think, how can I be that far, in Avasta, or how can I move forward in that direction? my gurus were great men, great leaders. They were extraordinary people. I am not. How do you tell people here that, you were saying, make yourself the guru. You are the guru. How do you get to
I think that's the hardest struggle for all of us. I mean, I don't want to come to this camp because I have the same fears. That who am I to speak on stage, tell people stuff? Now, getting up in the morning and doing my own thing. It's not easy, right? So I can't give you an easy answer to that. I think that the main thing is ardas to Guruji for Kirpa. That I have a firm belief, and if you study Sikh history, that the efforts that we make to become more like the Guru are not ignored by the Guru. They are recognized, and we are helped along the way. More importantly, I think that sort of daily, basic daily lifestyle that Guruji has given us is very important. Because even when it's difficult to see what we're aiming for, we can at least work on those little things, and over time, the big things hopefully will become easier. I think that, I can't give an easy answer to that, but I think also we worry too much about the end goal and not about the day-to-day. And I feel like maybe Sikhs today have a unreasonable expectation of what it means to be a Guru Sikh. If you ever read, it's a very interesting book, Sikhani Bhagat Mala, and it's apparently based on Sakhis that Bhai Santbir Singh used to tell. And anybody here who's ever read Bhai Gurdas Vada will know that the 11th Vada of Bhai Gurdas is very weird. It is all a list of Sikhs. It's just Bhai Gurdas listing off who were the important Sikhs in Guru Nanak's time, Guru Arjan's time, Guru Ramadas's time, Guru Arjan, and Guru Har Gobind's time. And this Bhai Mani Singh's Bhagat Mala is about an explanation of who those Sikhs were. Some of them are names that we recognize, like Baba Burdedi, but other ones we don't really know anything about. And while reading this book, I was amazed by the very simplicity of Sikhi. Sikh Hamdesi Guru Amritsar, for example, to Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, they say, Guruji, for example, I don't know how to read. I'm unpad and illiterate. I'm an old man. What am I supposed to do? How do I become a Sikh? How do I get to that stage? And Guruji says, go home and just do Namsamay. And the Sikh went home, and Bhai Mani Singh says that he became a Brahmajani. It's as easy as that. They make it a very easy thing. I think we have made it a very difficult thing. It's so hard. And maybe I did that a little bit today. What I was trying to focus on is not how hard it is, but how great we can become. And I think to get to that stage of greatness, it's just a daily routine that we need to follow. I can't think of any more than that. Any other questions? I think somebody had one up back there. On this side. Haji.
Block and Japji Sahib says that nothing happens to the white Guru's hukam. But then it's like, are we really in power? Are we merely puppets? It's just like, are my decisions my own, or are they? It's kind of.
This is getting into deeper philosophical questions, but I'd like to ask maybe some of our other speakers to touch on that. I would just say that Barney also says, "Apan hati apna aap hi kaaj sawari," that we have nothing happens outside of hukam. And nothing happens outside of Guru's Kirpa, but that doesn't mean you should be a passive participant in life, just letting things happen to you. Sikhi is about being active. How that fits in with hukam is a little bit more complex, and I think it might be a little bit too much for some kids. I think we should maybe talk about this later, or Bhai Singh, can you speak to that?
I would also like to welcome Bhai Santbir Singh, who just arrived this morning. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆ ਜਾਓ
ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪਸਾਬ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਜੋ ਕੁਛ ਗੁਰਸਿੱਖਾ ਤੋਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬਾਣੀ ਦਾ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਜਿਸ ਕੋਲ ਦਿੱਤਾ so when these are we puppets and those things, you know, do you have any control? Do you have free will? Is that a question?
Do you have control?
Yeah, it's free will question, yeah.
Achha, free will because the whole point is because you can either become a saint in this world, or you can become shaitan, you can become a demon like. So it's a choice for you, isn't it? Or you could go into a nightclub. The choice, yeah. So Satguru Bani, why is Satguru written Bani? Because you can either read and follow Guru, or you can ignore it as well. So there is a free choice in that. So Satguru Gita, but did I make a dar? Like these says complicated. Okay, with some job, the Trika or VG perhaps later on you can explain in different ways. But one just smaller dar, one example with the Guru Sikh, as in the last Khalsa camp in England, is imagine there's a cow tied to a pole. There's a pole there, and there's a cow tied up to a signal. And you can imagine the rope is like your gun. So you can only go in a certain amount of area to eat the grass, and that's determined by this rope. So that's a bit like your garden. Your garden from your past life, that determines your scope of where you can do. For example, you're born in a certain house, you're born in a certain family. That kind of limits you in some degree, and you're born in a certain religion, so you're being limited.
So we are the cow?
Huh?
So we are the cow.
So we're like the example of the cow is like you're limited, but you can still move around, but you're limited. So that's that socket is a very simple way I could try to explain Gurbani. And what someone used to go to a university. Kafi manu phone they emails me with questions. I usually forward the emails on to other people. It's very long emails. So I'm forward them. And one paisa, he said this guy is asking too many questions. He goes, there's a Gurbani can hukum, which everything is hukum, that there is nothing else. No one does anything, it's all by Guru's hukum, yeah? At the same time, in other places, Guru Sahib tells us, do this, do that. So there's two things. One is that Guru Sahib saying, do this, do that. Guru says, everything is being done by Guru himself. And Guru Sikh Surah Jawab that Tasim said that it's like there are different levels. When we read Gurbani, there's one level is a level of someone, spiritual state, some high level. So for someone in a spiritual high state, for them, everything being done is within the will of Vaheguru, because they don't speak, Vaheguru speaks through them, because they've surrendered everything. And dusra on a low level, he has to do action. So one thing when you're reading Gurbani, these concepts you have to think of, like there's some PhD level, there's one like a BA level, and there's some preschool type, post level. So when you're reading Gurbani, it's in the case where you find these different concepts. So some minor, you have to do your own action. But one thing is you need Vaheguru's grace with his kirpa. And kirpa one kirpa is you're born as a human being. Dusri kirpa that you're born in a Sikh family, or a family which is associated to Guru Sahib. So Gurdwara jante ya, camp te aaya. So the kirpa hui and someone said pata nahi mani lagda ta kirpa ho jave. And they say inni kirpa you do nitnem, hana on swere aaya se kirpa hui to the Guru's blessing, otherwise you could have been asleep hana karade maarde hone se boys people do na main sone is kayam. So to sare di kirpa hui hana. So one thing is udam karna hai, we have to try our best to do udam while they keep saying kirpa. So this socket we can listen to conscious now. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
There was this other, I was listening to this speech on the internet. There was one there was one thing that was So it's like saying like, oh, how are you going to use the key afterwards? It's like, if there's a shrabi there, you put a shrab in front of the bottles in front of the shrabi. It's his choice to make a decision, either to drink it or just let go. So same thing as the key, like, it's your choice to, like, you know, like, do bottle and stuff and reach that level. Like, it's not like, you know, like, Guruji's, like, only limited cheat, like, you know, to that, essentially.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?